Welcome to Healing the Spirit, a space where we awaken our creativity, deepen our connections, and remember who we are through the lens of astrology, archetypes, and art making. I'm your host, Jonathan Coe. Hello everyone, welcome to Healing the Spirit. I am so excited to share this conversation with you today with Kodie Smiley. For a long time, I've been wanting to create a series on the zodiac signs. And I wanted specifically to talk about them from the perspective of a conversation with colleagues, with friends, and to explore the archetypes of the zodiac signs through the lens of their lived experience, combined with what is said in the literature, what is said in different astrological texts, and the different authors who have spoken about these signs. And today, you are going to be listening to the first installment of the series. And guess which sign is the first to come through? Of course, it's Cancer. So I'm so excited about it. Kodie Smiley, my guest and my friend, is a really brilliant person that I met on Instagram. We have been in each other's orbits for a while, actually, and I have really deeply enjoyed seeing Kodie and her adventures and her gift as a teacher and as someone who shares information about the esoteric systems online. I told Kodie this at the end of the conversation. I perceive her to be someone who's really has this second nature ability to be receptive and to be open to receiving cosmic information and to filter it through her vessel and to share it with us while she's in the process of receiving it. Like you can kind of feel the insights coming through Kodie's ways of being, which is really, really cool. So in this conversation, we did that. We ended up creating this conversation where we together brought different lenses to look at the archetypes of Cancer. We brought in the human design gates. We brought in the gene keys on top of the astrological text itself. And it turns into this tapestry of knowing and insight and knowledge. And it's such an exciting conversation. So I really just want to let you listen to the conversation. And yeah, I really hope that this is helpful to you in more deeply understanding the energy of Cancer and how it's specifically filtered through the lens of Kodie, who is a Cancer rising. And I believe that some of these thematics will be relevant for you if you are a Cancer Sun, if you're a Cancer Moon, if you are a Cancer rising, or you have any prominent Cancer placements in your chart. Or even if you're just curious about learning more about Cancer. Okay, let's get into it. Welcome,
Perfect.
Kodie. Thank you for being
Yay.
here.
Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here.
I am
At the
so
beginning,
excited.
we were saying like this explosion of light when
Yes.
when we opened the Zoom call, it was just like an explosion of light and you said it first, but I was like, no, I felt your presence just like connect us. Like it was like
Yeah.
we went, doop, here we are.
Yep. Yep.
So I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, we had an 8-minute pre-game conversation and we were already cooking with fire. I've just really, really loved being in your field, and I feel like everything you
Mm,
share is just such pure transmission, and it's
mm,
also really provocative. There's something very provocative about your way of talking about transits, about human design, about astrology. And yeah, I think you're just absolutely brilliant. And I'm excited to
mm,
chat with you about Cancer. So I
mm,
wanted to have you over today because there was in one of your Instagram stories, you talked about the gate associated with our rising sign. And I
mhm,
had been wondering about this too. I haven't heard it talked about in the Earth text, human design, the, you know, whatever you want to call it, like the formal human design world.
mhm,
And that also made me curious about the decan of your rising sign. And I was
mm,
reading up like 10 minutes before we jumped on, and I just got so excited because I was comparing Austin Coppock's book on the Decans with your gorgeous Substack piece, and I was just
mm.
like, ah! So, before I fully jump in,
Yeah.
maybe let's just have people listening, get a taste of you, Kodie. Like, who are you today?
Who am I today? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Like, don't send me down an existential wormhole because I will never return. Well, today I woke up feeling extremely excited for like I've been looking forward to this call all month.
Me too.
Um, I feel like what I'm really bringing with me in this new season of my life, um, is like this we see this like all over Instagram, but like this idea of self-concept.
Mm.
Like I'm really knowing her and her
Mm.
is me.
Yeah.
And I've really like in the past 3 months, like really begun meeting this like essence of myself in such an intimate way that has me waking up daily going like, oh, this is my life. This is my creation. Like I manifested this, like the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And like I have that power. And so I feel like that energy is what I'm really like coming into spaces with these days. As far as like how people would know me online, um, I have probably over the past 3 or 4 years been sharing from the lens of human design. It really intrigued me I'm about 7 years into my human design experience or
Mm.
experiment experience. Um, and it has been a tool that both gave me back myself and also made me lose myself a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I was really intrigued by that. It was this very um, interesting system that like mirrored something about me that like the world couldn't tell me about myself. But then at the same time, it was so systematized and structured that I kind of like got lost in its sauce as well.
Mm.
And so I think from the way that I look at human design, it's all about relationship. I am all about looking at human design from a perspective of open systems. And we were in like we've both done living systems with Leah Garza.
Yeah.
Um and and that was like really transformative in my understanding and practice of
Mm.
human design as well as some of my other inquiries and research. And so now I look at it from like, how am I connected to my ecosystem? How does this blueprint, what I call it the cosmic synthesis, how does my cosmic synthesis connect me to the living world around me? How does it connect me to Jonathan? How does it
Mm.
connect me to the people I love? And so I'm really interested in questioning systems and kind of like poking back to this, like we're going to talk a little bit about this in the rising sign, poking into spirit,
Mm.
truth, like finding out what is actually underneath this thing. Let's kick it a little bit. Let's criticize it a little bit, like, or not
Yeah.
criticize, but critique it. Like, let's look at the essence that lays underneath it, under
Yeah.
this foundation. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit about me. Was
Wow.
that good?
It's
Did
amazing.
I do
It's amazing.
it?
I
Yeah.
have a curiosity before we
Yeah.
jump into Cancer. I'm
Yeah.
curious to have you talk more about this relational lens that you're placing on systems. I
Mm.
resonate deeply with that.
Mm-hmm.
And my experience, Cody, has been that when I put that lens, people get
Mm-hmm.
scared. A
Yes.
lot of people get very scared. And I'm suspecting, hypothesizing that part of that is because we have been conditioned to believe that we have control over our own destiny. And to then open up to this way of being and looking at the world and relating to everything else from the vantage point of we are porous and everything is impacting us, we are always impacting everything, is really threatening to the individual self that colonialism has asked us to uphold. I'm curious to hear about your thoughts around this, your own experience. Did it scare you? Do you also find that it scares other people? What's been your experience?
Hmm. Um, I think that, oh, that's such a it's such a great question. It's such a like provocative question because I think it's really touching something so essential. Um, I don't think it scared me personally because as I'm as I'm kind of opening myself up to like when I engaged with living systems, I was like, oh, okay, like this makes sense. To me, it was I've been living from this energetic space, like who I am and how I was born in this world. Like I don't have that consistency to really draw upon. And so like a lot of my environment and my world was really just an amplification and like reflection of all of these other people and systems and things around me.
Hmm.
And so I've really always, what I'm learning about myself now is like I've always existed in the unseen in that like energetic realm. It's been a way that like I find ground. And I obviously like, well, I don't know about obviously, but the unseen is scary.
Hmm.
In a world where we're taught to what's material, what's tangible, what can you see, what's linear, this like colonized thought, right? And so I think back when I was doing kind of this project where I was watching, and I'm still doing this on my own, but I was recording a podcast at the time where we were going through each of the gates. Gate 19 has a really interesting by Richard Rudds in his 64 Ways. He talks about the 19 and the gift is now I'm not going to be able to say it. So I'm going to have to kind of like tweak it here a little bit, but essentially that like the 19 is stretching towards the solar plexus, towards spirit, towards the unseen.
Hmm.
And that's heretical. When people question like the truth underneath what is of tangible material fact, it's heretical in nature. It's scary because it threatens to like completely destruct
Hmm.
the way that we're understanding our material realm. Like,
Hmm.
oh, something is kind of corrupt or rotted out or unsustainable in the system. And death is impending. Not death in like a scary way, but death in this idea that it's just a part of life and like everything has its time. It comes and it goes. We grow, we tend, and then and then that becomes the nutrient for the new for whatever new is sprouting through us or in the world around us. I don't know if I'm really speaking to that question eloquently enough, but I think it is. I have seen that it's scary to just question truth because truth is not something that can be fully qualified and held in like a tangible way that we
Mm.
can see it. It must be it's the solar plexus, so it's deeply felt.
Yeah.
It is the way that we transcribe and translate our own personal experience. So we have personal truth and then we have capital T truth and there's all of these truths around us. And how do we like come into relationship with my truth and somebody else's and still hold the nuance between those two things?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a really scary thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're also reminding me of how many of us have conditioning around what truth even means or how to
Yes.
express it. I'm
Yes.
thinking about all the political ideologies that we get really mired in.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who did not grow up or was not born in the United States, it's really funny coming into this culture because there seems to be a
Mm-hmm.
grid. And I remember the first few years being like, what is this grid? You know, the rest of the world sees America as just America. They do not care about the division between the Democrats and the Republicans. That is a rabbit hole I'm not going to go down on. I'm going to stop myself here.
Yeah.
But, it is really funny to see how, especially in this moment that you and I are speaking, there's so much division in that world. And, the rest of the world does not care. It is
Yeah.
not a grid through which the rest of the world sees this country. The rest of the world sees, okay, president
Yeah.
is Donald Trump.
Yep.
That's it,
Yep.
triggering as that might be. That
Yep.
is how the rest of the world sees this country.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and there is this funny way that I feel a lot of people, especially in the spiritual spaces, get really tripped up around needing to say the right thing, needing to be aligned with the right ideology,
Yes.
etc. Right? And I think that becomes an obstruction to exploring that truth on a more essential level.
Um, yes. As you're speaking right now, something that's like kind of coming up to me, this idea that you brought in about the grid, something that's been occurring to me is this like idea of contracts. Like, and we see this like I'm re-entering a career that I used to have as a real estate agent. But the passion behind that is still deeply spiritual for me because my passion lies in educating people about these contracts that we sign. And I think as Americans, we're so we were born into this system. We have like we're immediately assigned this contract, our social security number. We're immediately tied into this grid, this thing that you're talking about. There's a contract with our name on it, with like a number stamped across it, right? And then we come into the system learning how to buy cars and buy houses and like in but contracts are relationships. Contracts are relationships. They're codes to the way that the relationship behaves. And so when like and this is kind of I feel like I'm trying going to try to speak to this idea of an open system is how we're taught about contracts is you sign on the dotted line, that's forever. That's
Yeah.
forever. You can't give your car back. You can't get out of this lease, right? These are the ways we're shown in a very tangible way that this is how contracts work. And I think that sometimes that translates spiritually as well to the unseen. And so there's like this sort of apprehension and this fear of and this disregard for spiritual contract and the ways in which we're relating to one another and like trying to and because the solar plexus is all about like translation of the spirit. It's all about understanding what that code actually says.
Mm.
When I'm in relationship with Jonathan, like what's our contract here? And
Yeah.
like and what are the ways in which we behave and you know X, Y, and Z. And so yeah. That like as you were saying about that grid, that's like what was really coming to mind. And again, back to the it's like the relationships. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a perfect segue to Cancer.
Yay!
I feel like
Yeah. Perfect.
um okay, so let me start. So, just by orienting folks listening. So you are a 12-degree Cancer rising, Cody, and that means that your rising sign is in the second decan of Cancer. So I want to read this passage from um, Austin Coppock's book. Actually, I'm also going to share the screen with you so you can see the words as I'm reading it. I am not the best reader, so sometimes I botch things. Um,
It's
so if I'm mispronouncing or I'm doing whatever, you can correct me, Cody. But the second decan of Cancer, decan, is represented by the image of a walled garden.
okay.
And let me read this passage. In the first decan of Cancer, the tender and fearful bonds of intimacy are established, and in the second, the fragile dyad is incubated. In this phase come images of beauty, joy, and wealth, for these emerge naturally out of a matter properly nurtured. Yet nurturing is insufficient. What is precious must also be protected. The second phase of Cancer is like a walled garden in which something precious is kept. A greenhouse exists here to nurture what is beautiful and exotic, but fragile. Many of the images attributed to this phase picture figures of mirth and abundance. An early Indian text, the Yavana Jataka, offers the vision of a lovely woman, sweet of voice. Ibn Ezra follows suit, painting a similar picture of a beautiful woman of pleasant speech, as does the Picatrix. The honeyed tongue described in these images is also echoed by the traditional attribution of Mercury to this face, for Mercury rules speech. In Agrippa's compendious Three Books of Occult Philosophy, this rare flower is joined by a well dressed gentleman. The Rider Waite Tarot offers another cognate image, picturing three women raising cups together in celebration, called Abundance in both Book T and the Book of Thoth. It continues the same themes. Within the protected confines of the alembic, intimacy, vulnerability, and even frivolity are possible. However, the comfort and joy which occurs in such a place cannot occur without protection. Yet the barriers which surround and support the scenes of mirth are not visible in many of the images attributed to this decan. If the garden is not walled, then surely the wolves will find their way in. The triplicity method of planetary assignment attests to this looming thread by allotting predatory Mars to this decan. So I'm going to pause there. I'm curious if you have what's jumping out to you at you, Cody?
Oh my gosh. I'm actually really emotional. Like I kind of
Mm,
started tearing up.
mm,
Um, yeah, the protective part of all of this is really kind of coming through strongly and is like it feels like as you're speaking these words you're like offering like a piece of my soul back to me or something. It's like and it's a part of me that I've been striving towards that I've really been in a process of reclaiming, but this yeah, this is like connecting so many dots for me.
mm,
Yeah. I'm actually a little bit speechless because um so many of so much of what you're saying and even just like the images and the essence and the energetic that's being pulled from these words are things that I've like come with like soul knowing of and then like resistance to of
mm.
like you were saying like yes, 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 this is exactly, this is what I wrote on. This
Yep.
is this is it.
Yep. Yep.
Um,
Yep. Can I
wow.
read it back to you?
Yes.
Actually, before that, let me read
Yeah.
this other passage, Cody, because
Yeah.
this was
Okay.
when I read this, I was like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
relation to your piece. So this is
Yeah.
still Austin Coppock. A
Okay.
fragmentary Hellenistic text, the 36 heirs of the zodiac, attributes the face of Heracles, the muscled hero of Greek mythology. Yet a club-wielding epitome of masculine virtue, draped in lion skin, hardly seems appropriate for a decan concerned with maternal protection of the womb's fruit. To find the link, though, one need look no further than Hercules' name. Hercules is derived from Hera, the mother queen of the gods, and Kleos meaning glory. His name thus means Hera's glory. For those who know his tale, this is a strange name indeed, for even before his birth, Hera plagued and tormented him. Ironically, it was she who unknowingly suckled Heracles as an infant. The strength of the mother not only nourished him, but provided the architecture of his epic journey. For Heracles' 12 labors came at Hera's behest. Though on the surface Heracles is a symbol of masculine potency, his entire story from before birth until after death was orchestrated by Hera, the mother. While in later images of this decan we see what flourishes under the mother's protection, the story of Heracles represents a more profound and difficult truth. If he had only been subject to Hera's kindness, his story would have been short and pleasant, and no great deeds would be attributed to him. The mother, like the moon, has two faces, one light and one dark. While we may find pleasure in being coddled, the wise mother orchestrates challenges that her children might become heroes and heroines. In this decan, we see the protective, guiding power of the mother goddess. Rare pleasures bloom in such gardens, yet trials and great labors are equally nutritive for the developing soul. The great secret of this phase is the power of right incubation. So that passage in and of itself is like blowing my mind. But let me now read back to you, Cody, your words. Because I was just like, whoa.
Yeah.
So the title is Becoming Dangerous. Cancer season arrived in my body first, resensitizing and awakening the slumbering injustice of my uninhabited shell. She didn't come quietly, no. Her waters of knowing awakened the edges of my blissful ignorance. It's hard to be fully alive, to feel so painfully and acutely in an already burning world. To begin acknowledging every way that I still uphold this destructive, degenerative illusion we're subject to. How I hide from the full fluorescence of my being, crawling back into myself, afraid of becoming. To love oneself truly is to acknowledge the visceral, pulsating pain body of this world. Ooh, that passage like got me.
Yeah. No, that just like, yeah. Am I allowed to get chills from my own sentence?
Yes, you are.
I just went,
Okay.
whoa.
This kind of love accepts and adopts the Great Mother, the one who holds and nourishes, but she cannot coddle. She won't put a band-aid on your boo-boo. She reminds you that you have everything you need right now. And to be honest, she's not like the moms of our collective cultural narrative. Selfless to a fault, subservient, pizza rolls hot out of the oven, quietly unassuming. She commands to be felt. She is exact and never misses. She sits by her waters of wisdom and dances with the song of her soul. She is as much within you as she is around you. She is dangerous. Knowing her is becoming alive, living for yourself, living outside of standard, tradition, expectation. This wisdom is an initiation of existing in selfhood alongside your brothers and sisters. Her danger is the seed of safety embodied. I'm going to pause there because I feel like that was like, holy moly.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
synchronicity of those two.
Yeah. Wow. Um, I'm like I'm reeling right now. Like I'm really, you know, this this is really this is really quite a part of me that I'm having a hard time like stepping into. But
Hmm.
it's ironic because it's like I'm I am her. Like I have been, the ways in which you're not consciously embodying and being that self, it comes out sideways
Hmm.
anyway. It's it that there's this reclamation, this understanding of this like protective mechanism. Like I call 39 the claw of the crab. And I said that before I even knew like this app kind of gave me that exact point like, oh, I'm 39.2 rising. I am the claw of the crab. Like it was like this whole what? And that protective mechanism that it's a bite. It's a bite of truth. And there just like this kind of passage says, it doesn't coddle.
Yeah.
And so being raised in kind of a culture, as a woman who is taught like to be the good girl, the nice, the nice one, it's it's like sometimes the truth isn't nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah, this is really actually just hearing this and having and hearing these two connections between my own work, my own knowing, I'm writing it and and this other work that you read, it's like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have found in doing many readings that for a lot of people, stepping into their rising sign is really challenging. And I am not
Mm.
sure if this is an inherent feature of people's experience with astrology or if it's just because I struggle with my rising sign. So as a practitioner, I then fold people into my
Mm.
field that also struggles with their rising sign. But I'm a Virgo rising, and when I first found out about it, I was like thrashing on the floor. Like quite literally. I was like, why? And I did,
Yeah.
when you said earlier that this part of you has been difficult for you to step into, I really felt the resonance of that in my own experience
Mm. Mm.
because that's part of my journey too. And I'm curious to hear you if it feels right to talk more about what's felt challenging about this for you. And I'm hearing too there's a cultural piece maybe here too for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the cultural piece, and there's like multiple layers of the cultural piece. There's just like the overarching culture. I was also raised as a Mormon, and
Mm,
so that very much is like subservient woman, like in order to have a family of all time and eternity, you're just gonna have children and like serve your husband. Like and I'm not trying to like generalize that and blanket state like that's just how it is. Like
yeah,
that's not my trauma speaking of how I see it. That's actually how you're raised. And
that
and
was the
that was
prescription.
that was the prescription.
Yeah.
That's the teaching. That's the woman's place in life and in the home. And so you can see like I would also be curious because this concept of the rising sign has always been a little um I would say probably even confusing. I would be curious
Mm,
just like to hear from you your wisdom.
yeah.
What exact like I get like the idea of the rising sign, but like
Mm,
what is it kind of pointing to?
yeah.
And and so yeah, these kind of layers of cultural conditioning on top of it, that being my rising sign, it's like obviously that was the conditioning force that was coming through and like more prevalent because I think as human beings, what I've realized is like we come in with these contracts and life is happening around us, some of us in vastly different ways, but really there's a soul contract to learn something. And
Mm.
so no matter what the environmental factor is outside of you, whether it's church, whether it's the culture, whether it's like the mean teacher in second grade, there's a filter for through which like that wound will begin like festering or inhabiting. Does that
Yeah,
even make sense?
makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And so I think for me, that's been the biggest kind of conditioning force. And then I think it's a little bit of just this part of being human that it feels a little bit scary to inhabit our power, you
yeah,
know? You know?
yeah, right. Yeah,
But back to I am curious because I feel like it'll help me kind of like connect the dots a little bit more.
yeah.
So much like I actually feel a little I'm feeling surprise in like
Mm.
a really beautiful way, but it's left me a little like lost with
Yeah,
words because I feel that I'm now in this like integrative kind of beautiful not not chaos in a bad way, but like, oh, something's trying to integrate and land here. So
yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about your perspective on the rising sign and like how we actually and you kind of having this experience of finding it difficult to embody.
Thrashing
I'd be
about. Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, yeah. So there's a simple answer and a more complex answer. So my simplest answer about the rising sign would be that it speaks to the quality of the path that you're walking in this lifetime.
Mm,
The rising sign becomes that which we embody because it is like what the path looks like, you know? So
mm,
I like to use this example to then ease into the more technical part of it because I think it also is super helpful to understand the mechanics of why the rising sign is the quality of the path.
mhm,
So I like to say, for example, imagine if your soul had incarnated into being a baker in this lifetime, right?
mhm,
You'll probably know how to work with flour. You'll know how to like put the bread in the oven and you'll get really practiced at it. And you'll have this experience of feeding your village, right?
mhm,
Versus if your experience was to be a mechanic, like a car mechanic, right? When somebody comes into a workshop, right? Or into a repair shop, um, they bring a car that has problems, right? So the first thing that the mechanic has to do is to diagnose the problem. That is very different than someone who is making bread to feed the whole village, right? So
mm,
over your life, when you continue to reinforce the path of the mechanic versus the path of the baker, you will end up being different personalities because these
mm,
are paths that require you to embody different qualities, right, in this lifetime. So the reason why I summarize the rising sign as being about the path that the person is walking in this lifetime is because the rising sign is where we have our first house in astrology. So if you think about the astrological chart, right, it is a circle divided into, in traditional astrology, equal divisions of 12 houses. There's also unequal divisions. We're not going to get into that for now. But basically, your rising sign is the sign that rules your first house. And then
mhm,
the rising sign sets up the rest of the chart. So all Cancer risings have Aries in their 10th house. So if you think about it, Cancer, right, is a sign that we associate with nurturing, with tenderness, but also a sense of protection, right? And so this is someone who is walking that Cancerian, gentle, nurturing path. Like that's what's being asked of them to
mhm,
step into in this lifetime. But their greatest contribution, their public work in the 10th house, is ruled by Aries. And Aries is a sign ruled by Mars. Aries is the warrior. Aries is a fire sign, right? Aries
mm,
moves and acts before thinking. Aries is the impulse, right?
Mm,
So there is a certain quality to this path of the Cancer rising that is unique to both the person, but also kind of will resonate with other Cancer risings. So to me,
yeah.
the rising sign is one that you kind of have to continue living your life into, and
Yeah.
it unfolds over time, especially when you don't have really prominent placements in the first house. Both
Yeah.
you and I don't have prominent
Yeah.
placements in the first house.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that informs our experience too. Like whereas someone who,
Mm,
for example, I'm currently working with someone who is an Aries rising, who has Mars in the first house. Like that person has a very different experience of Aries energy.
mm-hmm.
Because
Yes.
probably when they heard about it, there's a sense of relief because they're like, yeah, I already know. I'm this, super ambitious person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I read that recently. I've started like dabbling with astrology.
Mm,
Like I really got into like the human design part of things. And I think I've talked about this with you before. The astrology part of it has been this like puzzle pieces that come in after the fact.
mm,
And my mom's into astrology as well, and she gave me a couple books. And I read that recently that like any placements around your first house, your rising sign, really kind of inform the way that like that shows up, that rising sign shows up in your life. So that's cool to hear it said again. I'm like, that's reinforcing this kind of new thing that I've learned. But the thing, and I'm curious on your take on this, that I've been thinking, and again, from a very like beginner space and all of this, there's from my understanding, the rising is like it's like a point. It's not necessarily a like a planet that
yeah.
has like an energetic expression. It's a
Yeah.
point in the chart.
Yeah.
And so speaking to this kind of pathway part of it, um, it almost feels as though like these other points in the chart, just like you were saying with the Aries, Aries in the 10th house for me, which is I think it's empty there too.
Mm,
Um, there there's like an essence that is the same. There's
yeah.
like a similarity in those qualities and
Yeah.
I'm kind of like even noticing in the quarters. So like would it be the IC, the MC, the DC, the descent, like all these different points, they speak to kind of the same kind of protective
Yeah.
quality
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Yeah.
across all, you know, that entire axis.
Yeah. Yeah. So all the angular houses in your chart, right? The first house, seventh house, 10th house, and fourth house
Mm-hmm.
are in, at least if we use whole sign system,
Mm-hmm.
are ruled by cardinal signs, right? And cardinal signs start
Mm-hmm.
seasons. And the start of something is always fragile. The start of something
Mm-hmm.
needs to be protected in order for the life cycle to actually be
Mm-hmm.
able to continue.
Yes.
So I think what you're speaking to feels to me specifically filtered through that Cancerian lens. And also, there is a connection between all
The
cardinal
cardinal.
signs of
Mm.
protection. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, there was also something. Hmm. Let me see if I even want to go there because I feel like I can end
Yeah.
up
Yeah. Yeah.
uh I can end up in a speech there. But I
Yeah.
think maybe one last piece I'll mention about the rising sign is, and this is kind of a question I was hearing underneath your question. This wasn't exactly where you ended up landing with your remark about the rising sign just being like a point in the chart. But I feel like this is kind of a hidden question that a lot of people have
Mm-hmm.
underneath that, which is if the rising sign is not a planet, why does it matter so much?
Mm, yes. I
Or, you know?
yes, I'm curious. Please
Yeah.
answer. It was a hidden question. I
Yeah.
yes, and I'm so curious about that.
Yeah. I think there is this fallacy. Like to me, that question,
Mm-hmm.
at least when it arose within myself or in people that I've taught astrology to, carries an implicit assumption that Astrology is just about the planets and about the stars. It's not,
Mhm.
right? Astrology is an art that has to do with the synthesis or this meeting place between heaven and earth. Astrology is about as above, so below. It's not just about
Yes.
the above, right? So the
Yes.
rising sign is really important because the rising sign is the exact degree of the sign that was rising on the easternmost part of the horizon when someone was born. And that
Mm,
moment of birth, right, speaks to the start of something. It
yes.
speaks to the start of the unfolding in this lifetime. So it's terrestrial as well as being heavenly, right? So the
Yes.
rising sign becomes extremely important because it's kind of like this gravity point. Like you can think of it as the first note in the symphony.
Oh my
So important,
gosh.
you know?
Yes.
That first note is like the first, your introduction to the whole piece, right? Yeah, yeah.
Wow. No, this is and I have chills even listening to that because this is like a really big part of like what gets me juiced up about the whole thing.
Mm,
And I think I mentioned it a little bit earlier is um in the way that I talk about the body graph is that it's a cosmic synthesis.
mm,
And if you look at so much of like my work is attempting to like poke through to essence, to
yeah.
like the pure essence of something. We have like all these stories and all of these like all of this surrounding all of these qualities surrounding the the essentialism
Mm,
that's at the heart of something. But when you can get to the essence of something, you can really start extrapolating the relationships that then kind of extend out from that point.
yeah.
And so for me, like in my journey with human design, I went back to the Black Book, to the very beginning, like one of the first teachings on this system. And at its core, it is all based on a theory. Well, all of this is theory, right? Like
Yeah.
reality is a theory based. I mean, that might
Yeah.
be like a little silly to say, but um, but more specifically, human design is juxtaposition, unified theory.
Mm,
And it speaks to the fact that it's not we're not just looking at one set
mm,
of star imprintation, cosmic information and imprintation. Human design brought another layer in, which is 88 degrees before we were born. And so we have these two sets of cosmic information that synthesize, and they're on a square. They're 88
mm,
degrees from each other.
mm,
And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like everything is made from a square. It's the production of life.
mm.
It's like the tension necessary for something to exist.
Yeah.
And so we literally have these two cosmic imprintations of information that are holding us together, synthesizing us into being, like literally into this reality. And and so I love that you said that because it's like that's what's and I think it's really important for people who are engaging with the human design system to understand that one, it's a theory behind all of it, and that gives you a huge permission slip just in and of itself
Yeah.
to understand that you can engage with systems from this perspective of theory and not linear like a linear what's the word? Absolute. It's not
Yeah.
absolute, right?
Yeah.
And that it speaks to this like entry point, this dawning of the soul, this first note into being, and
Mm,
that's like being created. And we're creating that in every single moment that we
yeah.
exist, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm curious, like, yeah, what's been your relationship with the rising
The
sign?
rising sign.
There's like something I want to say about the relationship to this that feels like, we can get really caught up in like planetary energetics and expressions, and there's something so kind of there's something so I don't know what even the word is that I want to call it. There
Mm,
it's touching something really specific here,
yeah,
even in talking about the rising sign, and that it almost there's almost a grounding
yeah,
energy to it. And
right.
I'm curious, like from your perspective as a teacher, but also your relationship to your own rising sign, what that is.
Mm. I think in this moment, what's coming up for me is how I usually practice relating to my rising sign is in moments of deep confusion about who I am, where I am, what I need in life, going back to investigating the Virgo energy,
Mm,
which is my rising sign, right? So whatever your rising sign is, going back to investigating, like going back to first principle, essentially,
mm,
of
mm-hmm,
like, what is Virgo? Who is Virgo? What are the
mm,
qualities and conditions associated with Virgo? What does Virgo need to thrive?
mm-hmm,
Where does Virgo lose its potency, right? Or
mm-hmm,
where does Virgo die? So even just to think about this, so let's not use Virgo because we're talking about Cancer here. Let's use Cancer. But thinking about Cancer, Cancer as a cardinal water sign, right? So cardinal signs start something. We can think about Cancer as that place where the river begins, or
mm,
maybe even that eruption that causes a fountain to start, right? Cancer
mm,
is like that moment you open your faucet and it's like water comes through, right? Cancer
mm.
is like when the water breaks, when a woman is pregnant and the water breaks,
Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So what does Cancer need? And I think the
Mm,
passages we were reading, both your writing, Cody, and Austin's words, were kind of hinting at this, right? That one, at least one slice of the Cancer energy has to do with protection, that it
mm-hmm.
also has to do with nurturing. It's not just protection for protection's sake, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's because, for example, this is distinct to, for example, the energy of Scorpio. Like to me, Scorpio as a Mars ruled sign can have that energy of protecting for the sake of protecting. But
Yeah.
Cancer is not just trying to protect. Cancer is protecting so that nurturing can happen, so that life can happen, so that, earlier in that passage I was reading from Austin, he was talking about how within the walls, within the confine of that protection, we can we can take pleasure, we can relax, we can chill, we can even
Mm-hmm.
have fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which we can argue that maybe in the depths of the other watery sign, uh, Scorpio, that frivolousness, that playfulness is not always available, right? But
Yeah.
in Cancer, like we can chill, we can
Yeah.
snuggle with our mother or with our beloved pet, right? With our children. But there has to be some sort of protection around it because otherwise the wolf is going
Mm.
to come in, right? And it's so
Yeah.
interesting here that you, in your piece, also quoted Clarissa Pinkola Estes. I don't know where this came from, but the quote says, "You stand in my danger because I will protect, I will help, I will create, I will defend, I will unleash, I will hold back, I will restrain, I will open up, I will carve doors and walls. You stand in my danger."
Mm. I love hearing those words again. This quote is from The Dangerous Old Woman,
Mm,
which is one that I love to return to.
yeah.
Also, side note, I get to go study with her in about 2 weeks. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah. I'm going
Wow.
to a 6 day retreat and I get to learn from Clarissa herself.
That's
It makes me
amazing.
so, it makes me really emotional. But this book was so transformative from this idea. And I think like we're really like touching it here in the conversation of safety and
Mm,
danger. Like to create a places of safety, there's inherent danger present of just like also life. And that in order to combat that, there's edges of ourself that we must sharpen
Mm.
that are that to become dangerous in order to protect that kind of inner vulnerable space. And as you were speaking, one of like I don't know if I can go here, but like past life regressions that really like comes up for me
Mm.
and is a huge part of my programming is this lifetime where I remember living this frivolous, safe life. I'm like in this tribe of women, and there's all of these children.
Mm.
In the regression, I'm usually pregnant,
Mm.
um, and men come. The church, they take different forms.
Mm.
It's like it's the church, or it's like an angry lover, you know, like X, Y, and Z. And I get chased into this kind of forest I'm running. And all I know is that, like, they're going to take my baby and
Mm.
they've left the rest for dead. And this kind of place that was deeply loving and nurturing and seemingly protected is invaded. And and so this is like a program, whether you believe like past life regression is like an actual lifetime, or if it's like DNA memory that's being kind of dredged up and given archetypal visual.
Mm.
um it is deeply imprinted within me, this program to run.
Mm.
And so this is like also another kind of layer to that thing where it's like the rising sign for me is really hard to inhabit. This kind of like it's an uninhabited shell
Mm.
because of this like transgression, no matter what time and place that it happened, that like it happened, you know,
Yeah.
and is imprinted as like a traumatic response in my like visceral body
Yeah.
that I still live with. And what's interesting about it, I think, is that one, there's just this question of safety. Like, what is safety?
Mm.
And what I often have to remind myself is like, let's look around. Look at the time we live in. What a gift that I get to create safety. And I
Yeah.
think in like even like non-dependent on time and space, we always have that opportunity in our consciousness to become dangerous enough to protect our idea. And this, you know, in this piece I continue to talk about that safety is really like a concept, right? Safety is not inherent or given.
Yeah.
It's a concept, and in order to develop that in our lives, we must become kind of this dangerous thing that protects this concept of safety for ourselves. um so yeah,
Wow.
I kind of felt like yeah, sharing that like more embodied sense of where, and I think even speaking to that, I think a lot of people live with that memory
Yes.
in their body, and I think a lot of us run off of these programs that are not here and now, but have been inherited in our systems.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
1,000%.
yeah.
I want to hear you speak about the gate associated with your rising sign, Cody.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we could if you want, I can also speak to like some of the others and like the kind of connections that are being formulated in this Cancer season. But 39, um I think it's a lot of this is like leaving my brain because I now am you know, coming into my own language with it. So I believe it's traditionally called the gate of provocation.
Mm. Mhm.
Um and actually, would you mind scrolling down to the on the because the gates are at the bottom, and I love
Yeah.
looking at um I love looking at the gene keys uh transmissions because I think that back to this thing where I'm always trying to connect with the essence of something. I really
Mm.
think that Richard Rudd did a beautiful job at like connecting with what these energies are.
I
So
agree.
39 is really speaks to this thing that we've been talking about of protection. It's an individual circuitry. And individual circuitry is vulnerable.
Mm.
It's very specifically ours. It's in in kind of my spaces and how I teach it. Individual circuitry is internally oriented. It's like that innermost self.
Yeah.
And we all come in with the inherent knowing that we protect the most vulnerable, whether it's children or a tiny plant that is just first growing. We're gonna like build a cage over it so the bird doesn't come and eat it. We come in with this knowing to protect that which is vulnerable, and individual circuitry is vulnerable. And so, like, what I see a lot of times is that this is the circuitry that gets um, like entropied. It like falls in
Mm.
on itself. Like, I'm not bringing this forward because there are not systems of protection that allow me to express this vulnerable energy in and of my that is like deeply personal to who I am.
Yeah.
And so 39 it really speaks to this. It's the individual quality from it's in the root. And Cancer energy is there's three different gates. We're going through them kind of systematically right now, or in a progression right now. Um, that Ra Uruhu talked about as in the root is pure life force energy.
Mm.
So this is a time and space, like it's the middle of summer, Cancer. We feel that like that pulse, that energy coming up and through us.
Yeah.
And so yeah, 39 really is. So you have 52 and 53, which are format energies, and they're kind of like straddling the 39. And
Mm.
39, that kind of crab claw comes out to protect these format energies, which are like, for anybody who's listening, format energies are, whether they're individual or collective circuitry, they are very vulnerable because they're they're like the what's the word I want to use here? They're the structure.
Mm.
They're the structure to consciousness being like developed and grown from like this unconscious realm, like
Yeah.
these seeds that have taken root. And so the 39 comes in my opinion, to kind of like poke and also to protect
Mm.
what is being kind of tended to and grown in this protection
Wow.
of Cancer.
Wow.
I feel like that I just like droned on. Sorry if I that was
No,
a
I feel
lot.
like that was beautiful, and I
Yeah.
was marveling at how all of this is like coming together.
Yeah.
You know? It's kind of scary actually.
We
It's like
have
how what's going on?
we have this kind of like torus field where we like start
Mm.
somewhere and we like loop out and then we come back into the center. Like it's always like so exciting because I'm like, I know I can say it in the space with Jonathan because we're gonna it's relative. Like
We're picking
it's
up the threads.
yes, we are.
Yep. Yep. Wow,
Um
that's really wild. I'm also seeing, so you were saying Cancer energy is associated with 39, 52, and 53 in
yeah, so these are the gates that create the zodiac of Cancer.
okay.
So 15 is on the cusp. I think it's like
Mm,
15.2 or
mm,
15.3 that's officially Cancer.
I see.
And then at the bottom also I think 56 is half Leo, half Cancer.
Got it.
And so I this is like how I've been kind of learning about the zodiac
Mm,
from my own perspective is like looking at the gates that quite literally build this heavenly, what I call the heavenly body of Cancer. Is
mm,
like all of these different qualities that speak to um the yeah, I'm like almost I'm seeing it the gift of 39 is dynamism, but this dynamic kind of colorful flavor of Cancer, that it's not just like one specific quality, it's this beautiful thing.
yeah.
Um, and something that is really striking to me about the Cancer energy when we look at the gates is there's kind of in other zodiacs, there's a so for example, Gemini was all throat activations was all kind of here. It's a very dynamic energy anyway. It's like the dyad, right? It's dualism and mirrors and like seeing like the fractal rainbow of consciousness.
Mm.
And so that's already there, but there's usually this tying thread. And in Cancer, there really is this huge, it's like expansion, retraction, this like
Mm.
inherent intelligence of like creating safety and then becoming the danger. It's like I'm gonna be both things. There is
Yeah.
this yeah, there's an intelligence there that is chaotic but structured.
Mm.
And I really think that like speaks to this archetype of the Great Mother
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
everything that we're really talking about, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see it? Do you see that contracting, expanding quality in your lived experience as a parent or as a steward of the observatory, for example, which we're also going to talk about?
Yeah, I think right now I'm really, and this conversation is honestly helping me to integrate something I've had a hard time putting words to, which is that I feel this restraint and this like, it's like this kind of stop go inside of the ways that my provocative nature
Mm.
wants to express.
Mm.
And it's like right now I'm developing humility and also this kind of natural intelligence behind what do I actually need to poke at? You know,
Mm.
it's very like, and because it's in the root, what do I have energy for? Like
Mm.
I'm not here to poke everything,
Yeah.
you know, and I think that just goes, that's a quality of Cancer that I would say, like, if you're listening to this podcast and you're like looking at can like the cancer of your body, like who is she inside
Mm.
of you?
Hmm.
Actually, and I'm curious, I want to hear if you have like Cancer in your chart. I want to
I
hear this
do.
after. Yay.
I
Okay.
do.
I want to like, can we talk about that a little bit? Because I want to know. Um, but I think that for me is like the thing that I'm really trying to integrate right now. Like I don't have to be provocative and provoke everything. I
Mm.
can really it's Cancer that and the root center. The root center keynote for me that really comes through is attunement.
Mm.
It's a deep knowing of the of like my own energy and my
Yeah.
cycles. And once I'm there and I feel that, you really, root center energy is also very directive. It's kind of formatting, where is energy going to the spleen? Is it going to the sacral for co-creation? Is it going to this solar plexus to kind of poke through spirit?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
There's a
Yeah, it's
like, don't get me started because I like I'm like, I need to shut it down. Shut down the faucet. Once the undefined throat starts going, it's like, okay, chill out. Come on.
I
Reel her
love it,
back in.
Cody.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so it's very illuminating. And I think
Mm,
it for me hearing you talk about this, I think earlier even just that little piece you mentioned about the root. What were the words you were using? Like what I was seeing in my mind was like the root directs.
the root directs.
The root directs. You know, the
Yep.
root center in human design directs. Yeah.
Mm,
I do have Cancer in my chart. I have Jupiter in Cancer in the 11th house. So in traditional astrology, that is an exalted and rejoicing Jupiter. So it's like
okay.
mega, I wanted to say mega daddy, but actually no, like I would say it's mega mommy.
Yeah, mega mommy.
Yep, yep.
Oh my God.
And I also have Chiron there in Cancer. I think what I will say about Cancer in this specific moment from my embodied experience is
Hmm.
that because it falls in the house of shared hopes and dreams, and the kind of
Hmm.
community, the 11th house is the community that we constellate because of those shared hopes and dreams. These are not just
Hmm.
the community that's like your local. parent teacher association, right? These are the
Mm-hmm.
communities that magnetize to you because of the things that you hope for the world,
Mm,
for the
yes.
for the bigger world, right? So my experience with it has been colored by both really challenging experiences because I feel like I was so in touch. Like I always had this unshakable, deep tether to a vision of the world. But, you know, I don't like to call it the vision actually, because it's not a vision to me. To me, that is a slice of reality that's already here that I have access to. And
Yeah.
it's almost like when I came into this world, I got the key, right? Which is also very related to Chiron. Like I got this key to the secret garden that I have access to anytime. And
Yes.
my early life experience has been that whenever I'm in that space and I'm kind of talking and moving from that space, the adults around me are like, what's going on? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, what is this? They don't know how to be
Yeah.
with that energy. And they're
Yes.
like, we don't know which box to put this in. Like, what is
Yes.
happening? Are you okay? Are you normal? Like, that's been my experience with it. And I would say, like, it's kind of, to kind of tie this back into the root center, it's, um, it's provided motivation from like this wounding to develop skills, develop like artistic and mystical skills for me to be able to share this with people. To
Mm,
both
yeah.
communicate it
Yeah.
and be in that playful space, right? And to me, those skills have created kind of the walled garden that we were talking about. Because in some ways, like if
Yeah.
somebody's, for example, not into astrology or not into the mechanics of energy, like they're just not going to be attracted to my work. And
Yeah.
that creates the context, right?
Yes.
And on the other side, so that's maybe more of a skillful expression of it. And I think the challenge I've had with Cancer energy has been that there's this desire to project aspects of my own unhealed wounding into other people that can
Mm,
result for me in over-resourcing other people out of my own projection. Like in a way, it's like I touch in with like, ooh, like I can tell that this is really tender for you, and let me support you in that way that I think you need support around,
yes.
without kind of proper communication, Cody, and without
Yes.
recognizing boundaries and relationality, like right relationship, and also
Yeah.
context. Like I think
Yeah.
when I think about the Cancer energy moving through me, it can sometimes lose sight of like what is the context because there's so
Mm-hmm.
much nurturing energy that wants to come through that it's just
Yes.
like, let me give you like, 45 minutes extra in the session.
Yeah. Yep.
So, it's been a journey learning how to use the word you were using earlier, more properly attune, to
Mm-hmm.
understand when boundaries are actually necessary,
Yep.
and to understand when helping stops becoming helpful,
Yeah. When it becomes enabling and now it's like causing an issue. Yeah.
or actually like flooding the basement, right?
Yeah.
Too much
Yeah.
water like floods the basement and it's
Yes.
dangerous to the house. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is actually something that I was like contemplating for myself is that I was really relating with what you were saying, like this idea and this like projection of like what somebody else has, hearing a tiny tidbit of their life, feeling this nurturing energy come online. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to project into like what it is that you might need.
Yeah.
And I think that like this decan that you read, this passage that you read, and then reading this piece that I wrote, there's a lot of wisdom in that kind of tough shell of
Mm.
that, like those boundaries that can be really drawn, and like understanding like I don't know fully what this person needs. I need to be attuned to my own energy, and that is going to guide whether or not there's nurturing that takes place to in right relationship, like you were saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because this is going back to a point you were making earlier, Cody, around relationality.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, you know, there's a lot of talk nowadays. I'm going into provocation land here. There's a lot
Yes.
of there's a lot of talk, and maybe this is a nice place for us to land our conversation about cancer as well. There's a lot of talk about people being toxic nowadays.
Mm,
I am not going to diminish that because yes, some people have enabled themselves and been enabled by the world around them to perpetuate a certain toxic pattern that makes them a toxic person, right? That's true. And there's also this other reality where energetically we're always impacting one another. So even the most toxic person, if you have the skill and the intentionality to be in front of them and transmute that, it can turn into something really gorgeous.
yes.
But you have to not shy away from your power, essentially. And you have to have skills around it. Like you can't just do that
Yes.
willy-nilly, right? But yeah,
Yes.
yeah, like absolutely. And I think um when the conversation stops at like, okay, we just gotta cut off contact with people who are toxic, then we are disregarding the nature of reality because reality, like there are toxic substances everywhere in nature,
Yeah.
you know? And
Yep.
and in Chinese astrology, one of my Chinese astrology teachers, there was something she said that has never left my mind, Cody, which is she said the ultimate medicine is death. Because by the time you reach death, you don't need healing anymore, right?
Mm,
So in a way, you know, and when we think about even the word medicine, uh, the Greek word for it is pharmakon, and pharmakon speaks to both poison and medicine, right? All
yeah.
medicine is poison.
Yeah.
All poison can be turned into medicine in the right
Yeah.
context and the right dosage, you know?
Yes.
So,
Oh, oh my gosh. Chills. Yeah.
um, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anything else you want to share about Cancer, about your rising sign, about everything that we've been talking about?
There was one thing that I wanted to say that I think that this moment in time, this season, once a year, as we go through Cancer, it's really this time where we get to reconnect to like the idea of heaven on earth, the Garden of Eden. And we're all like, a lot of us have been really conditioned by even the first story, the very first story of what heaven on earth is, Adam and Eve and the snake and all of these topsy-turvy stories that we get. And um kind of and what you were saying before kind of made me want to speak to this, that it's like I've really always felt that too when you're touching into that Eden of your life, that heaven on earth that is like it's here. It's right now. Like me and you were like, no, you guys, like what? It's and people around us that have not been who have not been given the opportunity to accept it and see it and like be with that heaven on earth. Um it's almost more painful,
Mm,
right? And so like I can't even believe that right now because like my life, that would be a destructive force to the way that I'm maintaining this structure of my life, because I think that inherently there's life and there's destruction, just destruction, they come hand in hand. And
yeah.
so in order to step into your heaven on earth and your Garden of Eden, you have to allow structures and systems to crumble around you. And that's the provocative nature of Cancer. That's the
Mm,
passion and the cardinality and all of this, these wise waters of Cancer and what she has to kind of share with all of us
mm,
as we move through this season, we all get to touch into that feeling.
Yeah.
And so that I think that's what I would say to like
Mm.
leave us with, because we whether we have cancer, well, we all have cancer. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cody. Can you speak more to your offering?
Oh man, the observatory. I am I'm learning. I'm constantly humbled by being a creator, and I whether it's rising sign or my Virgo or my Aquarius, I don't know what it is. I have a really hard time like doing it the like Instagram way, like the prescribed way, like having like an official launch and like doing all these things. So I have this wonderful space. It's called the Observatory. And
Mm.
actually its conception, the like whole rebrand came about because of our last conversation. And I think it was, were we Pisces or Aries? I can't remember.
We were like middle of Pisces, like that transition between Pisces and Aries. Yeah.
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 And after I got off the call with you, I was like, oh, it's called the Observatory.
Yeah. I remember
And
this.
and and the whole this is a space for experimentation.
Mm.
And it's still kind of under development. I had a wonderful team who got to like put this like beautiful space together, and my Pisces energy, I'm really like reclaiming her, but she's chaos. She like wants to evolve, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know, maybe we'll do this and maybe we'll do that." But it's fun. I'm not selling myself well. Basically, it's a space for experimentation, and I think right now I want to really play with Substack and offering the observatory inside of the observatory Substack for now,
Mm.
and expanding into this membership space. If
Mhm.
you feel like diving off the deep end with me, giving, kind of seeing what the early stages of the observatory has to offer, you can visit my website and go check it out.
Mm.
Essentially, right now we are following the gates, the zodiacal progression through the gates via sun transit. And so we right now we're looking at Cancer season. We're looking at the placements of Cancer in our human design chart, and kind of just experimenting and identifying and reclaiming what that expression of ourselves is. Like what is that communicating to the entire open system of the
Mm.
rest of who you are? And how is it in relationship with yourself, with the people around you, with the world around you? And so I kind of offer different points of contact, the gates, the root center. There's a course called Doorways to the Divine, which is an exploration of all of the nine centers, and that's being kind of well, communicated as as we progress through the season. So
Yeah.
there's actually there's a lot of really awesome stuff in there that I'm still just, I feel like I the the education and the deep understanding is really there for me, and I'm learning to become the teacher.
Mm.
I'm lear and as a reflector, it's like I need spaces of collaboration and feedback to really get that, and I to be quite transparent, having a hard time like trying to communicate this thing
Mm.
and see what it wants to become fully.
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
so
There's
yeah.
what I'm loving hearing about it, Cody, is first of all, I just want to point out that every time I hear your transmission, I probably already said this in the beginning, but every time I hear your transmission on the transits or the gates on social media, I just feel this, like you have this really unique way of kind of letting the truth come out of you. And it kind of
Mm,
feels to me very channeled as well. Like
hmm.
truth, not just, you know, there are many different ways to express truth as we kind of unpacked in the conversation, right? But I feel like the brand of truth that comes through you is very like, again, very channeled. Like I kind of feel it coming through your vessel. Like I
Hmm.
see it actually clairvoyantly as like this bubble coming through and like then spoken through your your vessel, your body. And that's such a beautiful expression that I'm seeing that I'm sure so much of that is like the foundation of the observatory. And also this whole experimentation thing I'm also really obsessed with because I feel like that just really honors your reflector nature, you
Yeah.
know, and it really speaks to your commitment and your self-knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I cannot believe that we didn't talk about you being a reflector in the in the context of Cancer because I think it's relevant too. So I guess the last piece that I want to ask you here is um about the whole piece around waiting throughout the whole lunar cycle, Kodie. What is your experience or what is your interpretation relationship of that piece? And just for context, for those who are not human design fluent, um, your aura type is a reflector, Kodie,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
human design prescription is to wait a whole lunar cycle. And that
Mm-hmm.
always seems very interesting to me because I'm like, I don't know, I always hear that and you know, the way that it's landed on me from kind of Earth text human design world is I kind of hear it as a restriction,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't it's almost like people communicate it to me as a restriction, but actually behind that what I'm hearing is do whatever the fuck you want.
That's yeah. Yeah. No, you
What-
got it right. You nailed it.
Is that accurate?
Yeah. That's it. Just do whatever the fuck you want. Um, no, it really was it was very restrictive to come into human design.
Hmm.
And I was like there was so much about the reflector that I like immediate like I had listened to a podcast where it was like a Jenna Zoe podcast and the person she was in that was interviewing her was a reflector. And
Hmm.
Jenna's always like, "Oh my gosh, here's the whole thing." And I was like, "That's me." That like
Hmm.
I know that that's me. And they were
Wow.
saying it was like, small percentage, blah blah blah. We don't even need to get into all of that because it's actually besides the point. But I knew that there was something there. And so
Hmm.
then when I saw it was wait 28 days, I was like, "Oh, screw this shit. Like I am out of here. This is not okay. That is not how I operate." But because Cancer is about feeling, right?
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
being attuned to the life force that's coursing through our body. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to feel how much of the experience of life is left out as I'm waiting to engage it 28 days from now.
Yeah.
Hell no.
Yeah.
Hell no. And so engaging that process, and I would say anybody, this what I've understood about the reflector type and all of us, all of our types offer like a core essence and lesson to the rest of how we are designed to operate as human consciousness.
Mm.
And the reflector specifically is here to kind of like amplify and illuminate just human nature, point blank period. And I think waiting 28 days really just is like an illumination, an amplification of um how we're all very cyclically tied to the kind of like the waters of our body.
Mm.
The consciousness, the ever kind of shifting nature of the way that we think about things. And I think like big decisions, yes, like the way that I've started understanding that it's like I'm gonna wait longer, but I don't think that that just goes for the reflector. I think
Mm.
that goes for every single other type.
Agreed. Agreed.
Every single other type. If
Agreed.
you have a big decision, you should just be waiting.
Yeah. Yeah. As a cycle generator, this has been the biggest tripwire, Cody, because there
Yes.
is an immediacy to it. And
Mm-hmm.
also, I feel like I cannot discount the reality that my sacral has been conditioned,
Yes.
right? My
Yeah.
sacral has been like there has been conditioning, and not to say that conditioning is bad, but it's like if I act on every single if I act on every single like every tiny sacral response that I get, I will just kill myself, quite
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
I will I will be bankrupt, I will have no energy, and I will like hate life.
Yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, so much of some of the prescriptions were handed um in human design. There's a quality of truth there of
Yeah.
how we could operate if things were the way that they were supposed to be.
Hmm.
But I'm you know what, it's really funny because I'm having a lot of anxiety about it, but the teaching that came forward during Taurus season was something that I called emergent strategy. And now I'm starting to see like that's like an actual book. Like that's like like I think I saw it on like Leah Garza's stories. Like there is, or I can't remember
It's
whose stories
Adrienne
it was.
Marie Brown.
Yeah.
She wrote
And
that book, right? Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I haven't read it yet. And I'm not sure if like I'm still writing
Mm.
this lecture and this lesson, but
Yeah.
essentially it speaks to how we can engage with all of these different auric types and the strategies. That strategy is emergent through the being, through the
Mm.
becoming. And
Mm.
our auric type can help kind of like show us what it looks like as we decondition, but that process of energy moving through the form really is a experiment in emergence and
Yeah.
understanding and being attuned to that. And so also to add that additional, I think this is part of like in marketing the observatory, I am really a teacher of energetics and
Mm.
looking at the gates and the zodiac, all of these through the lens of like actual energy coursing through the body, through the
Mm.
cosmic synthesis, and how
Yeah.
we direct that with our consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds so you
Yeah,
to me.
it is. It is so me. Yeah, and I'll learn
Yeah.
how to communicate it eventually.
Oh, Cody, this has been just such balm for my soul. I love talking to you. I'm
Yeah.
sure we'll have you back again. And
Yes.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being you. Thank you for all your wisdom and your brilliance. And yeah, what a gift.
Yeah. Thank you for being you too. I enjoyed this like so thoroughly. I'll be taking this and putting it in my pocket and carrying it around this like this presence we shared with me for the coming however long. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.